It's just been a process of learning, growing. You never learn everything. Every day you're going to get a job that's going to be different, and you fall back on all your past knowledge. And I've been doing it. I've been working in the machine shop since 1969, but it's been interesting. I've always enjoyed making things. I enjoy building the parts. It's kind of fascinating. The people that taught me were the men that learned the trade in the 40s and 50s during the war, and so you had a very different shop. I remember the first guy that we hired at that shop that came in and had a pair of dial calipers, because we all had vernier calipers, and we all looked at him like, oh my God, this guy's rich. How does he afford that? There were no calculators. It was all your math was done with a pencil and an eraser, big eraser, and a notepad to do all your trig work and everything else. And one of the guys that worked for us at that company, his wife worked at a department store that was in Dallas at the time called Sanger Harris, and they had come out with a calculator, but it would only do, it did addition and subtraction. I don't remember if it even do multiplication or division, and you had to do your subtraction kind of real weird. But he brought that over, about the size of a cigar box, and we were just fascinated. Oh my gosh, how'd you get so rich? You just had to figure everything out and work out your problems and get the final product that met the needs. There was big companies back in that era that had the NC machines. They didn't even have any computer machines, and they came along later. I've always been around doing military type work, because when I first started it was during the Vietnam War, so we were busy all during that. And that was kind of interesting at that shop, because everything was going great guns, just busy as all get out. And then the war came to a close, and TI called us and pulled all the work in one day. And so we had a shop meeting that day and laid off half the men. And it was rough. And we got to building pedal steel guitars. So for several years I made the woodwork of pedal steel guitars. That was kind of weird. But around here we've made a little bit of everything. A lot of military, but back in the heyday, Mike got us with the medical stuff. Just a big assortment, and you kind of learn to live with it. So you look at something and you've never built that part, but when you look at it you think, okay, this is kind of similar to, you know, a job that maybe I did 20 years ago. And you remember what you had to do then, and you remember your headaches and what you had to do to get out of that, and how to keep from getting into a problem. And so that's where 57 years of, basically I always, whenever I tell someone up here how to do something, I always have to tell them, I'm not smarter than you are, but I have screwed up a whole lot more parts than you ever have. And I had to get myself out of a jam. And so that's how you learn. You'll never learn it. You'll always be trying, and I think that's part of the fun of it. Try to do the absolute best you can. When I have taught Eric and Alex how to run the lathe, I've always told him, I said, listen to the lathe, she'll talk to you. And the machinery will talk to you. You can't hear her talking to you if you're playing earbuds in your ear wide open, listening to heavy metal or something. But she'll tell you, no, this isn't working right. You need to stop and fix me. They need to learn that. You need to learn that it's expensive to buy the tools and to take good care of them. You've got to build it where you're proud of it. It's not a job, it's something that you're proud of doing, that you're helping someone else, and someone's going to be glad to see it. So So that's what you have to go through. In the old days, you didn't buy insert tools. They just weren't available. Well, they were a few, but not many. Nowadays, everyone looks in the book, oh, well, I need to buy this tool. Well, in the old days, you got over there and hand ground what you needed to build your part. Or you thought up something and you built something that was going to do what you needed to do. That's gone. It's an art that I guess just went away with kind of laziness in a way. The tools, though, have helped as far as how you can run a part. But there are times when you've actually got to just flat make something. Yeah, and that's it. I told a guy that was over here one day and watched me run the lathe, and I said, I didn't color inside the lines on my coloring book when I was a kid. I said, you have no rules to make a part. And I said, if you have a part and you give it to 12 guys in here, it'll probably get built 12 different ways. But I said, ultimately, you just got to get the part built to meet the print. Don't care how you do it. And so, yeah, there's different ways to do things. But ultimately, you just have to make sure that your part is what is on that print. I've been, like I say, I enjoy building things. I got involved playing with airplanes, built airplanes. And I've always kidded everyone around here I said, let me give you an example. I said, you need to do the very best you can, make the very best part. I said, it's like my hobby. I said, I'll take an airplane apart, put it back together. I said, then I'm the one that has to put his happy butt inside there and take off. And if I did something stupid and wasn't watching what I was doing, well, 20 seconds later, I might die. So watch what you're doing when you're making your parts. You got to make it good. I always taught Alex and Eric, we'd have a program, we'd write a program for the lathe, and we'd reread it. Try to find all the decimal points that you might leave out or all the negative signs. There's a lot of things, and I always told them, I said, these are things that make the part real noisy. I said, the machine will crash. And then I'd also show them that there are times when you might have to worry about it, tools hitting into the chuck or whatever. And so there's ways to look at that and make sure you're not going to have that happen. And then we would set our offsets on the outside up a little bit or in the board down a little bit so that your first part may not be exactly right, but you measure it, then you tweak your numbers and make a second cut, and it's good. So generally speaking, if you'll watch what you're doing, you can pretty well get your first part to be good, but you have to pay attention and do what's right. JB, that was the one thing about JB. At the first shop, he was actually my supervisor. And I remember the very first part I ever ran on a lathe, one right after I'd got there, and he was going to have me make it. Didn't know what I was doing. And all of these other guys, like we were just talking about, that had grown up and learned during the 40s and 50s that were great machinists, they're sitting there watching. And I got down to right at the very end, and I turned the handle the wrong way and dug the tool into it and ruined it. Well, JB started calling me names that your mother would tell you don't ever call people. And all the other machinists were just kind of turning their head like, JB, don't be so rough on the kid. And finally he walked off, and they're all over there patting me on the shoulder, and I think it's going to be okay. And I finally looked at him, I said, hey, he's yelled at me before. I said, I don't ever worry about it. I said, I'm just used to it by now. I think, and the way for a long time I was the supervisor up here, but I was always a working supervisor. I still ran the machines. And I had a habit where I'd get everyone going in the morning on their jobs, and then I'd go start on mine. But about 2 or 3 times a day I would stop and I would walk around to each one, and it was more or less to shoot the bull, because I didn't talk about the job, didn't talk about anything. It'd be, what are you going to do this weekend? Did you go fishing? Did you go hunt? Just whatever. But the whole time I was talking to them, I'd have my calipers in my hand, and I would have one of their parts, and I would be looking at the print, and I'd be checking their part that they were working on. And they knew I was checking their work. but I'd never say a word about it unless if I measured something and I saw it might be pushing the limits or something. All I do is when I set it back down and get ready to walk off, I'd say, double check that number for me. I don't know if I checked it right or whatever, but see if I'm right. And that's how I'd leave it. And so you try to stop your scrap when it's at the early stage, unless you just really like to throw money away. And when we first started Regal, we had a policy where we would tell a new hire, okay, once you're comfortable with everyone and you pick out someone that you trust as far as checking parts, and we would pair up. So you run a part, you run a cut, you go over, and that other worker was actually your first article because we didn't have enough money to have a QC guy permanently. So we were all policing each other. And it worked out good because, hey, you're going to trust the guy and you're not going to get your feelings hurt too bad if he says, no, stupid, you didn't do that right. And it's weird in one way because I remember several times I'd walk over and I'd let Rick check mine because, like I say, we knew each other for so long. And I've had instances where I'd take a part, I would have bet $100, no problems. And I would put the part down and turn and lay the print so he could read it. So I'm looking at it backwards. And as soon as I looked at the print backwards, I'd see where I'd made it wrong. And I'd just snatch it up, turn around, walk off. He said, "You want me to look at it?" "Nope, not right now." And so that's kind of a weird thing that goes on. But I believe it's why you need to have someone watching over your shoulder. But back to when I was saying when I would walk around, it gives you a couple of other things. One of them is you learn what each individual's capabilities are. And I would keep that in mind because whenever I would have a stack of work to look through, because I'd have to go through it, decide what tools we needed to buy, what material we needed to buy, I was also looking at who was going to run it because I knew who could do what and who would do it without scrapping it out so we could get it shipped and make money. But on the same hand, you would pick up a job every once in a while that was a little harder than what someone's used to running, and you would give them that. And that way, they would have to struggle, but that's how you baby steps bringing them up in quality. And that always worked out pretty good. Another thing, when I would walk around during the day, I'd be looking at you might say the progress, where they were at with a job. And I could say, in my mind, I'd say, okay, he's got about another 30 minutes to go or another hour to go. And I'd already know what I was going to have him do next. And so I would go over and get the next job, and I would just lay it down on his workbench. And I'd say, that'll be your next job. And one of my reasons, invariably, you're going to pick up, see what crap the boss is giving you right now to have to deal with. So you look at it, and so they can kind of be thinking a little bit how they're going to run that. And if you just let them finish the job, first thing they want to do is put all their tools up. You hand them a job, they got to get all the tools back out. So if you give them the one ahead of time, they'd already be that much ahead. Like I say, you don't just look inside these lines. Everything outside the line's fair game, if that's what it takes to get to the end of the job. We had a guy one time that could build anything, gorgeous, gorgeous parts. He learned in the Navy. You couldn't teach him how to do things fast. And I told him one day, I said, well, if you'll do thus and so, this way, it'll make the part run quicker and we can get it out of here. Well, no, I was told by so-and-so, which was his instructor in the Navy, this is how you have to do it. I said, but it's not the only way. You can do it this way, it makes it faster. But this is how I was taught you have to do it. I said, okay, let me back up. This is in the Navy. I'm trying to make money. I said, we need to do it this way. And finally one day I had to say, I'm sorry, but we don't need you. We can't make a living with you, so you need to go somewhere else. And so you have to kind of watch out. If you can have people that can just piddle and they will eventually get something made, but if you can't make it in the time frame that you quoted, then maybe they didn't serve a good purpose. It's a fine line that you got to play, because the bill collectors always want their money. It's that simple. And it's very, very expensive to run the shop, I guarantee you. That was, JB would always hire the top ones he could get. And yeah, they cost you more. But ultimately, they're the cheapest. Because they don't scrap as much, they get it done quick, and you don't have problems. So, money-wise, you pay a little bit more to them, but it returns the benefit of everything runs smoother, no headaches, and all good parts. And so ultimately the ink's black at the end of the month instead of red. We at one time, between Rick and JB and I, we had 32 motorcycles at the shop. And so in the afternoons, after we sent everyone home, Rick and I would go over and get a pair of the motorcycles out. We go ride for a few minutes, come back, park those, get another couple out, and go ride them. So we might ride 3 or 4 different motorcycles all one afternoon. So yeah, we did all sorts of stuff, but we worked hard before that, I guarantee you. So it was May of '79 when we got enough work where I could start full time as the first employee, and that's when we all just started kind of growing. Hiring on more people. We filled up the first shop where you couldn't even walk in it. It was full of machinery and toolboxes and you name it. In about 80 maybe, a fella that I had worked with since 1970, and he had worked for JB also at a previous shop, came to work for us. And Rick was, without any doubt, the smartest person on running a machine shop I've ever seen in my entire life, period. And probably will never run across another one like him. He could run machines, figure out how to run them. He could run the front office, just do everything. But we worked together because we'd known each other for so long. And we kept growing, bringing in all sorts of, Regal developed a reputation as being kind of the premier machine shop, and that was because of JB. JB was he was a perfectionist, and I had known him since I was a young child. And when he hired on someone, you were told 3 things. You had to build the part to the print, couldn't have any scrap, you had to build it so we could deliver it on time, and you had to make a pretty part, because he said, I charge a little bit more money for my stuff, but if the customer gets it on time, they don't have to send it back because it's scrap and it's nice looking, they pay the money and they don't complain. So that's what built our reputation. And we would wind up getting phone calls from all over the country with people that, hey, I've got a problem, no one will build this part, or they can't build it, would y'all look at it? They'd mail us, this is long before computers, they'd mail us the drawings. We'd look it over and maybe yes, maybe no, tell them we could help them out, but most of the time is, yeah, we'll do it. And so we built a huge, varying type of work. It was a lot of fun. We built a lot of interesting things. Some of them monotonous. We had some jobs that we absolutely hated. But you do that to keep the doors open. About 1982 or so, the oil field work went away, because at that point we were doing a lot of work for a company that did oil field stuff, and we were doing work for Rockwell and TI. Well, we had to start struggling, and we fought through a lot of slow times like so many other machine shops in this area, just trying to keep our head above water. A lot of long days. Rick and I one time had to work 42 straight days, about 16-hour days, to get the work out, because we're just trying to keep the doors open, keep the bills paid. We were predominantly a machine shop, and JB decided he wanted to come up the next level, get a CNC and get some sheet metal, because prior to that there wasn't a lot of sheet metal going on. But then all of a sudden, it's kind of like you had a new set of engineers graduate, and you also had the .com coming along. And so everything turned into sheet metal framework and everything. So to try to keep moving along and being viable as a company, he needed to buy some equipment. Well, it turned out, because of his age, the bank wouldn't loan him the money. And so therefore, Rick and I had to go make a personal loan of $250,000 so that we could buy the machinery for the company. That didn't go real well at home, I'll put it that way. And but we got the machinery in, and so we started growing that way in the early to mid 80s. And JB was getting of age, he was time to kind of break away, and he had a wife he needed to take care of. And so that's when Rick knew Mike Powell, because Rick had worked for Mike Powell at another company. And so he had heard that Mike was hunting for a company to buy. And that's how Mike and Gail got involved with Regal. Rick brought them over. I remember the exact day when he brought them through the shop to look at everything. I can still see it in my mind. And they looked it all over and went through the time that it takes to look at all the business in and see if this is going to be a smart move or not. And that's how they acquired it. And so Rick and I, still there, and kept helping Mike run it, try to make success out of it. 47 years of Regal, and that's kind of where we're at today. So we've done well. Oh, I don't know. I've always looked at it, we're just a machine shop. It's where I had to go to work, and been through a lot of different eras, but they put up with me and kind of stuck by me when been through some hard times. But yeah, it's Regal. My advantage is just doing it for 57 years. We were a very elite group, and we got interesting work to build because of it. So, and like I say, working on a job now that I've literally been building for 45 years. So, I guess the customer likes it. That's about all I can say.